hello, it's Business here. So today I want to go over my updated thoughts about the Syndicate rework, the various safe houses, as well as a question that many people have been coming to me with of how do I fix my board? There's no way to reset it, the Katarina thing doesn't work anymore, they didn't add a new one. So first things first, we'll go over my thoughts as to the entirety of the rewards, and then I will get into how, from start to finish, no matter what state your board currently is in, how do I detangle it, how do I get the members into the locations I want, and how do I set up the more advanced, much faster methods that people were using in previous leagues, they're still applicable this league, to farm Syndicate efficiently. Alright, so we can see here a little cheat sheet, a little infographic as far as the rewards of Syndicate in 3.26, so kindly provided by Aelith as far as the template site is concerned. I've taken the time to highlight things as the bad, the good, the great. I'll briefly go through them, my explanations for them, and what I recommend you should be looking out for or deciding to farm. As I will stress, it's very important for you to figure out before you even begin setting up your Syndicate where you will want your reward members to be, because it'll allow you to form links ahead of time and save you some time down the road. So we have the members at the top here. I've highlighted 3 of them, not for their rewards. As you can see here, Hillock does not have good rewards in my opinion in Syndicate. However, when you kill these members in a map, they have specific drops. In the case of Hillock, he drops a card for Fertile Catalyst, it's very common. Cameria drops a card, commonly for Scarabs, and Elrion drops Elrion Jewelry, which, if you are lucky, you can still get well-rolled jewelry with an unveiled higher roll of Elrion. Those are the only ones that really stand out to me as far as people that you want to try to make sure are in your Syndicate, but you're not necessarily target farming for the rewards. Now then, let's go through the rewards. My recommendation in general is going to be you farm transportation and you farm research, but we'll go through them one at a time. We'll start with transportation. Any of the ones that are red, they're just bad. We'll go over there. The ones in yellow, we can go through. Map fragments. Elrion in transportation will drop you mortal fragments, regular sacrifice fragments, and more importantly, why it's like yellow, is it drops forbidden tomes for Sanctum. Gravicius in transportation drops full stacks of divination cards, so one everyone knows and loves. It's a fantastic source of divines. It's an okay source of trying to high roll T0s, T1s, whatever have you. Guff, he has a little chest that drops a pile of currency. It's like 4 to 5 stacks of random currency. You will infrequently, call it maybe 1 in every 4, 1 in every 5, you get a divine orb from a tier 3 guff. For the most part, you're looking at just getting like 4 chaos and some other trash. It's not someone I'm going to recommend, but again, if you're really desperate for divines, it can be an okay second choice. Janus provides in a T16 safe house. With level 3 Janus, you will get anywhere from 40 to 50,000 gold. Corel gives Anarchy Scarabs. I'm not too big on Scarabs in general in Syndicate. They're okay. It drops any of the Scarabs within that grouping, so all of the Anarchy Scarabs are available. If you do Ambush Scarabs, like you can drop containments, it still follows the rule of waiting, so they're not likely. Typically, you can farm Scarabs more efficiently in other ways. Rin in transportation, I think is phenomenal. 1, you get regular chisels, which you always need. 2, you get Kirek reports, which with the modifications to Kirek missions through the memories being integrated into the missions, especially things like Einhart Harvest Memory Beast, which is phenomenal. Having reports to be able to re-roll your missions over and over and over to finding them, you can get Maven chisels from Rin. I would highly recommend as your second person in transportation that you take Rin to go with Gravicius. I have Verici here as a red tier. I've done a lot of Verici. I've talked to a lot of people that have done a lot of Verici. We kind of knew Verici was going to be this way. It seemingly follows the rule of Emperor's Luck, which is a notoriously bad divination card as far as giving currency rewards out. And I have not been impressed by it. I've seen like, I don't know, hundreds of results from it. It's pretty bad. You're lucky to see Chaos Orbs, much less something higher. If you really feel like gambling, if you really feel like you can beat the odds, go for it. Moving on to Fortification, we could talk about some of the rewards. The main one that I think is good is unique maps from Rin. It has a series of unique maps. You get to pick one. It's good for doing your early completions, especially in SSF. But later on, I would highly recommend moving off of it. Some of the other ones are going to be like cluster jewels. You just get high tier cluster jewels. It can be okay for finding bases. You don't really care about the rolling it necessarily here. Again, some scarabs are good. Calgarian scarabs in particular, I think, are phenomenal. They were added this league. If I'm going to get uniques, I would rather them have implicits. Neither of them are terribly good, though. You have Torah here, which is interesting because Torah will give you access to transfigured gems as well as upgraded offerings. But I would still recommend just farming other safe houses and going and doing lab. And then again, Varici is similar to what he used to be in Transportation, where he gives you a bunch of fusings on tier 3. Now we get to Research, which I think is the best house, honestly. Outside of course, Gravitius. But in general, Research has the most benches that have, one, it was reworked the most. Two, it has a lot of very unique things that it brings to the table that other places can't give. We'll start with Guff. Guff, you have probably heard quite a bit about with the prevalence of Doriani mercenaries, where you need negative lightning resistance gear. Guff is a fantastic source of this. So Guff, what he does is he will give you a random piece of jewelry. I think it's just rings and amulets. I never saw a belt, but it should be rings and amulets. He'll give you a random piece of jewelry, and then he'll give you, depending on the tier you're doing, if it's like 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, he'll give you 20, 40, 60 exalted orbs and annulment orbs. And you just spam the item, you like alch it, and then you can spam annuls and exalted orbs. What you're looking for is you're trying to get either high stats or like high life plus a decent any kind of stat. When I say stats the first time, I mean like attributes. Or you're looking for a high lightning resistant roll. And then there's an additional currency in there, which is like a weaker version of a reflecting mist, which just has like a lower multiplier on it that you get to hit on the item. The objective of this mainly, and this goes for SSF as well as trade, but especially for trade, is to be getting those negative lightning res jewelry. Haku is the next one. Haku is he is incredibly situational. The reason I bring this up is because Haku will give you an item, it's like a random base, and he will give you influenced exalted orbs, which lets you create an influence item, as well as annulments and exalted orbs, and a Hinokora's lock. Now then, this is obviously not as powerful just like having a lock drop and then you can use it on whatever item you want. The thing that I think this is good for and why it's like so narrow is trying to make influence gear that has a modifier to set up for Maven orbing or Awaken orbing. Because you can end it on an item that has 1, maybe 2, in the case of Maven orbing, modifiers, as well as it's already locked. We move over to Janus. I'll show it in the video later, a couple examples of it. But effectively what happens is on a tier 3, all of these are going to be 3 star. You should never run safe houses less than 3 star realistically. What happens on 3 star is you get like 3 to 4 items, maybe as high as 5, very rarely, but 3 to 4 items. Most of the time they'll be tier 3, tier 2 uniques. Occasionally you get tier 1, which are still good for dust, or sometimes they're just good in the case of like Aegis Aurora or something. And you're hoping to jackpot a T0. They were kind enough early in the league to reduce the gold cost of the uniques. So the most gold you ever need to bring in is 135,000 to be able to buy a T0, but probably bring more in case you want to buy extra items. We go over to Leo, and he has a Jinn Touched Vol Orb. It's a new item that created this league. It's only in his crafting bench. Effectively what happens is he will give you a unique item. It's a random unique item. It'll give you a pile of the Jinn Orbs, and it corrupts the item similar to a Vol Orb, except a couple changes. 1, it can continue to be used on a corrupted item. 2, it doesn't have as high a chance as turning it into a rare item, which means you'll be able to use it more and more and more. 3, it can add more than 1 implicit, up to 2 on an item. So it's sort of like double corrupting, but you don't get a choice of the unique. It's a fun addition to the game. On the note of generic uniques, however, Riker, if you want. I'm sure you've seen people using this one. I think it's okay, simply because Ancient Orbs are like pretty easy to farm. But a tier 3 Riker gives you 30 Ancient Orbs, I believe it is, as well as a random unique, in the sense that you're going to get a random unique base, and you can just spam Ancient Orbs into it, hoping to get a specific unique of your choice. Torah, to make this as simple as possible, Torah is going to give you a random gem that you can roll the color. So like you get a strength gem, you can keep rolling a strength gem over and over and over into different strength gems, and you get to end up with it being like a 20/20 gem. The Vegan bench gives you a random item, and then he'll let you chaos spam an item, and then you get a fracturing orb. For the most part, yes, there are some bad bases. A lot of the weapons you don't terribly want to see, but anything that's like evasion base, you can roll for suppression, try to fracture it. Anything that is used for attributes such as like intelligence or dex or strength. You can roll and try to fracture it. A lot of things are fine with like T1 life regen, things of this nature. There are probably more stats that are worth fracturing and still being valuable than you may think at first glance. It's a pretty powerful bench, and I would recommend people use it. And then we go down to intervention. Intervention, as you can see, is mostly scarabs. I suppose it's all scarabs this league. And again, scarabs kind of fall into the line of, I think there are better ways to farm scarabs in the game. However, if you really want to focus scarab production, especially for something like ambush scarabs or blight scarabs, or titanic farming or ultimatum scarabs or catalysts, you can, and these are the ones that I would recommend, being ambush primarily, and then blight ultimatum. This is my overview. This is my feelings so far as the rewards for Syndicate in 3.26. These are my experiences. As far as like a hard set recommendation, what I'm going to be setting up, I'm going to have transportation as well as research. I'm going to farm Gravicious and Rin in transportation. So I want full stacks of divination cards. I want Kirak reports for memory missions. And I want Maven chisels for farming. And then I'm going to set up research. I've already acquired all of my reflected jewelry. I have multiple negative lightning, pretty much max roll jewelry. So I'm done with Guff. Although if you're not, I would highly recommend Guff, especially if you're in trade. You probably want to keep this forever. So instead, I'm going to be doing Janice for Gadiro, hoping for T0s, and Leo, because I think the Jinn Orb is a cool mechanic. If I find I need more gear later, I will probably move the Leo over to Vegan. But for now, I'm more interested in the fun than the progress. So we're going with Leo, Janice in research, and again, Gravicious and Rin in transportation. Now, with all that being said about the rewards of Syndicate, now we need to figure out how we're going to set up our safe houses in such a way that we can efficiently, ideally in 6 maps or less, be rolling through safe houses, getting rewards, and how to detangle whatever state your board may be in, assign the members that you do want to farm in their proper locations, and then how to build the connections, and then further, how to build intelligence so that you can begin farming properly. Some things that I would like to establish before you begin watching the walkthrough for how to detangle your board, for setting up your apps, for setting up your syndicate. I highly stress you figure out exactly who you want to be farming beforehand. The reason I bring this up is because you will have moments during the detangling process and the setting up where you may be able to keep some of the lines you already have and save yourself a headache in the future. If you think that you don't want to have a focused syndicate, if you just want to farm more all flames, get a little bit more masterminds, just run safe houses in general, I hope you can still take a little bit away from my reward tiers. You can attempt to push people in the right direction as you are farming safe houses. But if your goal is to just farm all flames, to farm Katarina, you don't terribly want to focus your syndicate, then I would highly advise you just connect most of the people and you take the actions of interrogate when they're 3 stars, execute them up to 3 stars, take any options that add intelligence, and just spam through safe houses as quickly as you can. For those who want to have a more focused farming strategy, for who want to really reap the benefits from the safe house rewards, especially some of the reworks, we can get into the details here about how you go from whatever state you're in to a completed and functional board. Some ground rules I'll also establish before we begin the process. You will be unallocating the lethal extraction node. You will unallocate test of loyalty. I would recommend keeping effective leadership, and then just making sure you have a 100% chance for June to appear in your maps, either through scarab use or allocating the points on the tree. If you have points to spare, it would help you to allocate these small nodes at the top of the tree that increases the reinforcement chance. Keep in mind that this is simply a setup as far as the syndicate nodes are concerned for setting up your safe houses beforehand. When we get into running them and building intelligence, we will change the tree slightly. But for now, before you begin detangling your board and setting up your new syndicate, I would highly recommend you unallocate lethal extraction and you unallocate test of loyalty. As well as, you should have bribery disabled. Okay, one more set of rules, one more set of guidelines before we go through the walkthrough of entirely breaking down your board and rebuilding it. First things first, you need to plan who your reward members are going to be. This is important because you're going to be able to keep some of those connections that you have in your current tangled board and save yourself some heartache later. You get to pick 2 different safe houses and 2 members within both of those safe houses. In my case, I'm going to go with Gravicius and Rin in transportation, and I'm going to go with Janice and Leo in research. You are free to pick whatever combination of 2 in whatever combination of houses you want. One small thing to keep in mind, if you farm fortification and transportation, it'll be a little slower because they compete with spawning in a map. Step 2, focus on getting your reward members on the board as soon as you can. As I talked about, one of the things you get to do as you're going through all these options are bargain options or some betray options, which will build connections that you get to keep in the future that are essential for beginning the process. This can't happen until they're on the board, so early on, you're going to be doing a bunch of removing anyway as a way to break connections, but never skip over removing a character from the Syndicate if you are still searching for your reward member. Step 3. I implore you, I stress to you, please watch the walkthrough entirely before doing it yourself. A lot of questions you may have as you go through it, I guarantee are going to be answered in there. Some won't, and by all means, ask me Twitch, YouTube, PM, whatever. That's fine. But the first time through, before you do it yourself, please watch entirely. That's all as far as the ground rules are concerned. With that being said, before we begin the walkthrough, feel free to leave a comment, a like, subscription, whatever, all the typical analytics stuff. Maybe I'll make more videos in the future. Maybe I'll have something that can help you out. As always, I appreciate you and enjoy. Alright, so this is what my board is currently looking like, where I have, the short of it is all of my 5s are connected to my 2s. My 5s don't touch my 5s, my 2s don't touch my 2s. This is a strategy that is something that was played with in the past. It's like a way to, effectively what happens is when you have your good houses in a map, it brings in the people who you don't want and you interrogate them for intelligence. But in this current setup, I have Guff and Verici, just because I was trying out some people, seeing how they did in the different houses. I have come to the conclusion that they're not very good, or I don't want them. So I'm going to go through the process of 1, breaking all of these links all the way to a clean board. I don't need to necessarily, because I could keep the Janice and the Gravicius lines, but we're going to break it all the way clean. I'm going to move Rin over the transportation, as I value her rewards quite a bit, and I'm going to move Leo over the research. They will be replacing Verici and Guff, and I'll show how we move them over, breaking all the links, and then how you begin setting up the new links for this setup, the more advanced setup. Just as an overview as to what the plan is going to be, as I said, I want Rin over into transportation. I want Leo over into research. So my first objective is going to be bringing Leo down to 0 stars through interrogation or some betrayal options, as well as Rin, and then placing them into the respective safe houses. If along the way I get options to remove rivalries or remove members from the Syndicate who have a lot of connections, we'll go with that. But first and foremost, my objective is to move Leo to research and Rin to transportation through interrogation. Just as part of the preparation for breaking the connections and moving people around, I will also be trying to set up anyone that is currently in the transportation or the research, which are my targeted houses. I'm going to be reducing them down to 1 star so that they are easier to then send to 0 star if I need to remove them or move them around. Okay, this is quite fortunate. As I said, Guff is one of the members that I want to break a bunch of links and get rid of. As you can see, one of the bargain options you can acquire is that they will remove themselves from the Syndicate. I'm going to pass on it for now because, I mean, in theory I would do this, but for the video's sake, I want to show later on how you would better try to fish for these options. But this would be a fortunate option for you to take because it would snap all of the connections he has outgoing as well as let me replace them. Now, just as a note here, every now and then you'll get bargain options. I'm sure you're familiar with these, where you'll see the person you are talking to, which is the last person in the encounter, that's why there's a bargain option, will want to become trusted with a random person in the Syndicate. If your objective is to remove the person who is currently being talked to from the Syndicate, or the person they're talking to, either of these people, you want to remove them from the Syndicate, it sounds a little counterintuitive, but you should take this bargain option to build a trusted link. Because, again, one of the ways that you remove people from the Syndicate is through bargain options, and another way is through betray options, which occur between trusted members. Well, occurs more frequently between trusted members. So this is something to keep in mind, that if you, as you're moving people around, as you're trying to set up, as you're trying to break your board down more, or trying to remove people from the Syndicate, building trusted lines can be helpful to allow you to get the proper betray line. So again, here we're trying to move Rin over, so I'm going to continue interrogating Rin so that she loses a rank until she's 0 ranks. Same deal here. Leo is someone I'm trying to move over to research. We want to reduce his ranks through interrogation. Just to reinforce as we're going through this, as I'm moving people around, as I'm setting up to remove people from the Syndicate, from breaking links, all these other things, you're not running any safe houses. Just let them naturally decay down from 100 back down to 90. Something else to note is you should have lethal extraction taken off. Not that you're really going to be doing much executing until later, but again, while you're doing preparation, while you're setting up your board, you should probably unallocate lethal extraction. Continuing on, interrogating Leo, getting the 0 stars in preparation and moving him over to research. Alright, just showing here, Rin is currently rank 1. We're going to interrogate her. She'll go to 0, and then she'll just like start floating around, in which case we'll then move her to transportation. Just as a quick note, as you're doing these encounters, as you're moving people around, you'll occasionally see bargain options to make for neutrality. This is them taking a rival connection and making it neutral. While you're resetting your board, trying to get all your connections away, this is a great option to take. For the most part, it's not necessary to like hunt for this option because you're going to be breaking lots of connections at once as opposed to doing them piece by piece like this. But it doesn't hurt to click, so might as well. Alright, so this is the convenient bargain that appeared. So Janice was one of the members of research. One of the bargains that can happen is they will pull people who are unranked, who are just floating around, into the house. And again, Leo is one of the ones we will move to research. Otherwise, we have waited until Leo shows up in an encounter in research, and then we can execute him in, but this is another way to go about it. Alright, so we need more than this to break up all our lines, as well as move people around. This can be a good example of one of the bargains that we talk about, where it's remove all rivalries of transportation members. This will be my Gravicious and my Guff. We can click this option because, again, we do want to reset this all the way down to 0. You'll see it snaps all of my Gravicious rival lines and all of my Guff rival lines. Alright, we're back. We had a transportation event. It had a Rin, so now we can use the execute command to bring her into transportation. Oop. And then from here, I will now work through breaking the remaining lines and then setting up the proper orientation of the members I wish to farm and then how to build lines from there. So in this case, Guff is the member I no longer want in transportation, as well as Guff is someone that has a bunch of lines that I no longer want. So we will take this person by person, although occasionally an option will pop up that lets us accelerate this process. But I will begin with Guff. What I'm going to do, I'm going to reduce him down to 0 stars, interrogate him down, and what will happen is he can now show up, once he's 0 stars, he can show up in the various encounters throughout a map, which means he can show up multiple times. Now we'll be leaving him till last to try to get the bargain option that removes him specifically from the Syndicate, or if he shows up in an encounter that has a trusted line, you sometimes can get a betray option from the respective members that he's connected to that will remove him. We'll be looking for one of these 2 options. Again, there's a lot we have to do, but we got another bargain option here to remove the rivalries of our research members, which will snap all the Verici ones, the Leo ones, and the Janice ones. We'll take this option to help accelerate the process. Boom. And now we're left with a bunch of trusted lines. And the way that I'm going to get rid of these trusted lines is by removing members from the Syndicate, or progressing them to rival lines and then, again, removing rivals. Just as an outline at this point of what I'm going to be doing moving forward, I'm going to break, again, these trusted lines by removing people from the Syndicate. Again, if I were to remove this Guff, who's going to be my first target of removal, he will snap the connection to Janice, to Ashling, to Gamaria. So, using that, I'm going to try to remove Guff to kill these 3 lines. I'm going to remove Gamaria to break the line with Rin. I'm going to remove Riker for his 2 lines for Janice and Leo. And I'm going to remove Verici for his line to Tora. Some of these connections could be kept, and you'll see that in the future. But for simplicity's sake right now, I'm going to break all of the connections and then show forming connections from a completely clean board. In line with that, because Gamaria is one of the people that I plan on removing from the board, I'm going to set him up, similar to Riker, where I'm going to reduce them both down to 1 star, so that it's easier when it's their turn for me to reduce them down to 0 and repeat the process I'm doing with Guff, where I will have him as a free-floating 0-star member, which will allow me to remove him more easily. Again, Riker is one of our people with a bunch of connections, so I'm just setting him up by interrogating him down to 1 rank, so that later on I can reduce them down to 0 more easily. Similar to what I was talking about before, we had a trusted relation between Janice and Guff, and so they're the only 2 members remaining in here, which means that occasionally you'll get betrayal options at a high frequency based on them being trusted to each other. And in this case, the betray option is to remove Guff from the Syndicate. This is great. This is what we're looking for. We do this, we get a random person, and all the lines that Guff had before are gone. Alright, so our mystery person, again, we kicked out Guff, we got a new person. Corel is who showed up. I'm going to stick Corel into fortification, because again, the houses that I'm farming are transportation and research. So at some point, my fortification and my intervention are going to have 5 people in them each, just to get them out the way. Corel is fine, he's clean, he doesn't have any connections. We're just going to shove him over. Oop. Now he's out of the way. Keep in mind, these like yellow rope connections, they're not relation connections. They're just showing that they're in this safe house, which is why when you run a safe house, it can like pull in extra members, but I digress. All right, so we're here. Chimeria, again, is one of those members where they have an extra connection that I wish to get rid of. So I'm going to, similar to the others, interrogate down to 0 rank. Then they'll start showing up in all the encounters. And again, anytime they show up in an encounter where they have a trusted relation, you can have them betray across and sometimes remove them. Otherwise, you just leave them till last, and they'll have a bargain option that appears infrequently that removes them from the Syndicate. So just as a note here, again, Riker is one of the people I want to remove from the Syndicate. I already have Chimeria at 0 stars, kind of like bouncing around houses. You can interrogate Riker down to 0 and set him up for the future. I kind of like doing it one at a time, though. But it's up to you. I suppose it doesn't hurt. So we'll just go ahead and do it here for simplicity's sake. It doesn't terribly matter which one of these shows up first. As a little preparation for later, when we are, after we clear the connections and have people in their proper places, we're then going to be moving members over to build connections. So in preparation of that, I'm going to be reducing some of these members down to 1 star so that I can more easily move them. Again, it seems a little counterintuitive. Chimeria is one of the people that we want to remove from the Syndicate. He got a bargain option to build another trusted relationship. This is fine, because once we kick Chimeria out, all of his relationships are going to break, and this is just going to increase the likelihood that we can remove him. So anytime they have a bargain option to build even more relationships, take it. Here we are. Chimeria shows up, as I said. He'll show up in most of the encounters. They have a connection between Rin and Chimeria where they are trusted. Now Rin wishes to betray Chimeria, which is going to kick him out. That's fantastic. That's what we're looking for. Boom. Get a new member. This new member, we're just going to put in intervention or fortification, doesn't matter which, just one of the 2 5-man safe houses planned. And then we'll continue working on breaking Riker by removing Riker from the Syndicate. And then we will try to move Verici to the same thing. We'll reduce him down to 0 stars and kick him out of the Syndicate. Alright, great. So again, we have Riker and Janice here. They have a friendly connection. We got the betray option to kick Riker out. Just one of our objectives because he has connections we don't want. Boop. He's gone. We get a new person. Again, these new people were just shoved into the houses of 5 that we're not farming. Now our last objective to clean our board is to ideally get Verici. One of the things to note is that you kind of need some amount of stars as well as connections. So I'm going to get these people's stars up, which will help bring out Verici, although it's still an uncommon event for leaders to show up. Once this happens, I can interrogate Verici down to 0 and follow the same process to kick him out to break the last link. Our new member, as we were kicking people out, we got an Elrion. I'm going to move him over to intervention. Just as a side, as you can see here, I've ranked up my Leo to make it more easy, I think, for the leader to start showing up. You need like a sufficient amount of members or stars. Oop. So we'll just tuck him away for now. We'll come back to him later. Still focusing on breaking this connection, and then we will set our people up in their 2 and 2 locations, and then we will build connections from there. So as we can see here, we're in the research. Our Verici honorable leader here has decided to show up, which is great. I'm going to interrogate him down so that I can then remove him from the Syndicate. In the meantime, though, we might as well execute our Janice up because he's going to be someone who we're keeping here. 3 ranks now. So this is a good option for later. However, right now we're going to kick Verici out, so this link will break anyway, so we won't worry about that. Go ahead and release him. We're leaving Verici till last because there's always a chance he just kicks himself out from this point, but he didn't, so we're going to interrogate him down again to make him down to 0 stars, and we'll do something similar to what we did before, where he'll show up in the various encounters until he either betrays getting kicked out, kicks himself out, or builds more trusted relationships to ideally betray and kick him out. Just again as another example, my eventual goal is going to be farming Gravicius and Rin, Janice and Leo. They are going to have connections from the 5s into the safe houses. You can see here, Ashling is just going to be one of the members of the 5 safe house, a house I'm not farming. They want to build a connection with Rin. This is good, but again, for this video, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to break it all the way down to nothing. We're going to be skipping these options. When you yourself are making these connections later, when you're building your board later, if you see, as you're going along, connections potentially being built between your 5s and your 2s, you can make these connections. They're fine. But for now, I'm going to be skipping them. Along the same vein, sometimes you get bargains that go the other way. They'll pull them in. Since it's intervention, and you see intervention fairly often, I'm going to be accepting of making this trusted link between Verici and Elrion, in hopes that Elrion will then betray Verici and kick him out. Alright, we're back. So, final person with connections is our Verici here. He has a bargain option finally to remove himself. We'll do this. Boop. We'll bring in a new random person. At this point, we have fully cleaned the board. Bonus points, I have the people that I want to farm in the locations I want to farm them. If, let's say, instead of Leo, you wanted to farm, I don't know, Ashling. It doesn't matter. The way you would do that is you would demote your Ashling to 0, and then you would put her into research, demote your Leo to 0, put him back into intervention. At this point, I'm going to set up my 2s and my 5s. Notice they have no connections. That's fine. It's intentional. If, as we said earlier in the video, you had made connections from your 5s into your 2s, which is what we're going to be setting up now, that's fine. They're optimal. But for simplicity of this video, I've reduced it to no connections. And then from there, I will show how to build the links for what we want. Here, we have our clean board. What we're going to accomplish now, what our goal at this point is, first things first, you need to put your 2s as the members you want to farm. Ideally, you do this as you were going through the rest of the process before. But again, to reiterate, if you didn't do that, you simply move the member. Let's say Ashling is in research, what I want. You would move the member you want into the safe house, and then move the member you don't want out of the safe house. But in this case, Gravicius and Rin in transportation is who I want. Janice and Leo is who I want in research. So, at this point, what we want to be doing is we want to be building connections from our sets of 5 into our sets of 2. The reason we do this, if we take a research, for example, if our research is connected outward towards the members of fortification and the members of intervention, anytime in map we see a research event, they have the chance to bring in members from the fortification, from the intervention. These are members we don't care about. Thus, we'll be able to use the interrogation option to build intelligence. Then, vice versa, when we're in the fortification or the intervention encounters, which we're not trying to build up the intelligence of, they'll pull in members from research, from transportation, and from themselves, of which we will then use that time to build their stars back up, so that then we can use, again, when they appear in the safe houses we want, the research and the transportation, they'll be back up to 3 stars, and they'll give more when you interrogate them. In line with that, the way we're going to do that is similar to the previous video. You can bring members in and have them build rivalries, which is part of what we're going to be doing. Alternatively, as you're doing this, again, we showed this earlier, as you're going through, you'll get bargain options, which will connect into the members you want. Just take the time to read them, make sure that they're connecting to who they're supposed to. In this case, again, Janice is someone we're trying to farm, so I want to build connections to the members of the 5 in intervention and in fortification. Elrion here is kind enough to have a bargain option to build a connection into research, into Janice. This will be our first link, and we'll begin this. Our objective, before we start running safe houses, is to have Leo have 2 connections into intervention, to have 2 connections into fortification, to have a Rin have 2 connections into fortification, 2 connections into intervention, and our Gravicius and Janice to have at least 1 connection into these safe houses. Eventually, your end goal is the images we showed earlier, and I can show them again here, where all of the members of your 5 will connect to your members of your 2 of both of the houses. So all of your 5s will connect to all of your 2s. Your 5s don't connect to your 5s. Your 2s don't connect to your 2s. Because again, they have very specific roles where when I'm doing a research encounter in a map, I only want to be bringing in people that I can interrogate. I don't want to bring in people from transportation because I don't want to be interrogating them. And again, when I'm doing fortification, I only want to be ranking them up and having a high chance of ranking up the members in the important safe houses to make sure that they're 3 stars for rewards. This is the process we'll start going through. Again, Orion had a bargain option. You can check bargain options at any of these members and see if they're connecting in the correct direction. Otherwise, I'm going to be moving members into our loot houses, research and transportation, one at a time, building rivalries, and then moving them back and moving someone back. This is why I've set up Chimeria, Corel, and Ashling and Orion here to have 1 star, so that they're easy to set back to 0 stars, so I can move them into research and transportation to build links. Alright, so it's kind of hard to see because the transportation's all the way over there, but this is a transportation event, which again, Haku's someone we're not farming, it's going to be one of the 5s. I'm going to move him into transportation so I can use their connections here to build rivalries or friendships, either or. In that same event, we left Rin till last. Again, when possible, try to leave the members that you want to build connections till last. So in this case, you want to leave, one of your transportation members last, one of your research members last, so that they may be able to get bargain options. You can see here, Rin wants to make a connection to Hillock, which is fine. The fact that Hillock's a leader doesn't matter one way or the other, because eventually you're going to be like interrogating all these people, so they'll be cycling. You just want to put a connection into intervention. So we'll take this connection here. Something to talk about. You'll get a lot of these options later on as well. So Janice and Leo are the ones we're farming, right? And like I said, your 5s are connected to your 2s, and your 2s is in my research people will not connect to my transportation people, but within a safe house, so like Janice and Leo here, they'll get plenty of options that'll be like, they want to become rivals, they want to switch places. Never do the one that like reduces their ranks. But if you see options that build intelligence later on as you're trying to make safe houses, these are good options. They're fine to take. Their relationship, whether it be trusted, rival, or neutral, will change as you go. It's not too relevant because they're already within the same safe house, so they can already bring each other into the event. It's not having any impact on who you can bring into events. As a follow-up to the whole leaving someone alive till the end so they get bargain options, something to consider is that every time research shows up, Leo is showing up, right? He is my front runner. He's the guy who's always going to be there, and then he's going to bring people in. Your leader isn't always going to show up. So while you're making these initial connections, or even like later on, something to consider is you might want to leave your leader, because these guys are never going to swap because of the way it works this league. You want to make your leader be the last person so that they can build bargains, just simply because you'll see them less. So in this case, our Janice wants to make a connection to Chimeria. Again, it's one of the persons of 5. It's great. We'll take it. So here, real quick, I'm going to interrogate my Ashling down to 0. Like I said, I'm going to move Ashling over to research so that I can build a rival connection and then move Ashling back. All right, again, we saw a little bit of this earlier, but this is part of why you like move people around and why you can have people floating around to try to build relationships. Our Ashling is 0 star currently. One of the bargains that can appear when there is someone who isn't assigned to a house, they will bring that person in as well as make them trusted. This is great. 1, because we want Ashling into this house to make relationships, probably with Janice. 2, we want the relationship between Leo and Ashling anyway, so it's a win-win. As we see, here's a Leo. We're still trying to build connections from Janice and Leo out into the 5s. Vegan is in fact one of the people that we'll be feeding later, using as feed rather. We can build this trust relation. It's great. Just to stress this point some more, when you are doing the safe houses that you want the rewards from, the point is to be bringing in the members who you don't want to interrogate. So every now and then you'll get options like this where Janice will try to connect to Rin. However, these are both members that I wish to farm. So there's no reason for me to want to pull in Rin into my research encounters, for example, because I won't be interrogating her. It would just be a wasted reinforcement. I want the reinforcements to specifically be the members of 5. So as you're building these connections, try to make sure that you don't connect your reward members to each other. So again, I'm trying to farm Janice and Leo. Ashling has showed up. What I'm going to set up here is having Janice and Ashling be the last 2 remaining. So I'll move Leo out the way. This is to try to provoke Ashling rivaling Janice. It will knock Janice back to 0 stars, but that's fine. I can just put him back into the encounter later on. But for now, we'll get rid of Leo by releasing him and see if Ashling gains this option right here. It's even the better one because it doesn't replace. It simply builds a rivalry between the leader and the new person. This is what's happening here. Sometimes you can do it the other way too, but this is a great option. We can betray here, building this connection. Now that our Ashling has connections to both of the members in the research, we're going to move our Ashling back to intervention. If you want, during this step, you can also, instead of moving back to intervention, you can move her over to transportation and do the same thing, which we may do here, actually. All right, continuing our journey of connecting our good members to our bad members. We have a Leo here. He wishes to build a trust relationship with Tora. Great, we'll do it. Boom. Continue building the relations. As I said, you typically just want like 2 outgoing to start, but eventually they're going to connect all of these 5s are going to connect to these 2. All of these 5 are going to connect to these 2, and same with the other 5. But for now, we're just building like some initial links so that we can then put them back into other places, and you can begin running safe houses and just let bargains take care of the rest. So we have another example here. Rin and Gravicius are the ones I'm trying to farm. Haku's the outsider. I brought him in to try to build a connection. Rin is not the leader, Grav is, so I'm going to get Rin out the way. Oop. I'm going to talk to Haku. Hopefully he builds a rivalry. So, this one exists, and we can do this one. It's not the ideal one. There's like 3 of them. There's one where he becomes leader, they become rivals. He takes his stars, becomes rivals, or he just gives some intelligence to become rivals. This isn't the optimal one, but it's still a way to build a connection. And who's the leader here doesn't terribly matter. It doesn't like impact the rewards or anything. It's a little bit about the connections going outward, but we can build more connections. So in this case, I'm going to accept this, and then I'm just going to work on getting Haku to no longer be the leader. What I will probably do, which is like a kind of clever way to do this, is since Haku is going to become the leader of transportation here, that means I can leave Rin and Haku as the last 2 remaining in the future, and Rin can hopefully betray Haku to build a rivalry and kick him out easier. Kick him down into 0 ranks easier. We'll take this just to build a connection. Like I said, we'll be looking in the future to try to make Rin and Haku remain in the event to build that relationship. Great. In that same event, Gravicius was our last person. We got a bargain option for him to build to Chimeria. Again, Chimeria is in one of our 5s. He's the people we'll be feeding into our 2s. So we do want to build that connection out. Our Leo got brought into an intervention event with Vegan. They have betrayal options because, again, they're trusted. To reiterate, the important part is that there are connections. They will eventually become rival connections, so this option is fine. You don't have to terribly worry about it. I will be taking this option because, like I said, most of these green lines, if not all of them, eventually will become red. It's just more important where they're going than necessarily what they are. More times, we leave Gravicius. This was a fortification event, right? Left Gravicius till last so that he gets bargain options. Every now and then, bargain options connect it outward. Luckily here, we get to connect to Tora. Fill out our connections even more. Here we have a follow-up to the Ashling. Our Ashling has already built a connection to Leo and Janice in our research. Now we're just working on interrogating back down to 0. And after that, we will then move the Ashling over to intervention, as we seem to have enough lines kind of going already that I won't take the time to move the Ashling over to transportation to build connections. I will just begin putting people back into their safe houses of 5. So our focus is now to get, ideally, Rin a connection with Haku, Haku to be sent back towards intervention, and our Ashling over towards intervention. Got an intervention event. Our Ashling was floating around. Can now pick up our Ashling, put her back into intervention. And then here, I guess we'll leave the Hillock class to try to build a bargain relationship towards one of our good houses. So we're still in the process of getting the Rin and Haku rivalry. As we're doing this, we can still build more and more connections. Leo wants to make a bargain connection to Corral, which is one of our 5s, so we'll do that. Great. All right, again, as we're setting up, as we're finalizing the setup, we still need to deal with the Haku shenanigans. We get more options. Again, anytime you get these bargain options that build from your 5s, in my case, my intervention will have 5 people, my fortification will have 5 people. These are the houses I'm not farming. Anytime you get bargain options from these members to the good members, the members you are trying to farm, that build trusted relationships or build rival relationships, go for it. They're what you want. Alright, so now we have an intervention here. Finally, at the end of it, our Haku has shown up. He's the last member of our 5 in intervention. To recap what has happened, we moved our Rin and Gravicius into transportation, moved our Leo and Janice into research. Then, through bringing people down to 0 stars, as well as moving them into these encounters, we built up some connections, as well as bargain options by leaving these as the last remaining members of encounters. We've built up, at minimum, 2 outward connections. There's 3 here, but 2 outward connections from the lower member of our farming houses. In this case, Gravicius is our lower member here. He has at least 2 outward connections. Our Janice here has built up a lot of connections, but he has at least 2. And our leaders of the houses that we're trying to farm have at least one outward connection to try to help build their rank back up after you run the safe house and they go to 1 star. So with this final movement here of executing Haku into our intervention, the board is now set up in such a way that members are no longer going to move. We're leaving them where they are. We are now free to start running safe houses. Effectively what will happen is, and I'll show some examples of this, we'll get a transportation or a research encounter in a map. It'll bring in this member, the lower member, because he's the only one available. And then based on their connections, they will bring in more people if reinforcement happens. You will then interrogate those people to build the intelligence. You are only running the safe houses for your ward members and repeating the process over and over. Now that we've finished setting up the initial board, now that there are enough connections that I feel safe in running safe houses and that it is a self-sufficient system, that it will continue going as well as building more connections, we can come back to the Atlas tree. Remember in the beginning, we had unallocated lethal extraction, we had unallocated test of loyalty, we had unallocated bribery. Bribery remains away. The reason we don't use bribery, it leads to more bargains, but it leads to bargains for things we don't want. Things for like currencies, scarabs, maps, veiled items. The scarabs are okay, the currency's not that good, the rest is trash. So, we'd much prefer that our bargains end up with things such as connections or intelligence gain. So I skip bribery. You can take the little node before it, but once you have veiled items, you don't need it anymore. We will be reallocating test of loyalty. This is the one that makes it so that when you execute a member, they will gain 2 stars rather than 1. Makes them jump from 1 to 3. I skip pillage and plunder. It makes the mobs harder. You get a little bit more gold from them is kind of what happens. It's not really worth it. And for my personal preference, I don't use lethal extraction with this method. There are some people that do. I would recommend trying with and without it. Effectively what happens is you build your intelligence a little bit faster. Personally, I feel like I lose more control by having lethal extraction, so I don't use it, but I would recommend you try it out. Other than that, as far as the Atlas is concerned, it plays well with fast strategies, such as large explosion expedition. It can be okay with crop rotation harvest, while being a slower mechanic is something that you can just enter the harvest, see if you have 4 or more plots. You can pair it with destructive play for some boss rushing. You can do shrines and strong boxes. You typically want to look towards the right side of the tree. Okay, now that our syndicate is all set up, and everyone is in the positions they want, we have our good houses, our bad houses, we can now show how you actually build intelligence into the houses. We can go through some examples, go through a couple safe houses, yada yada. We are in a research encounter in the map. Research is one of the houses we want to build up intelligence. We will be doing this by interrogating members from other safe houses that are brought in by our connections we made earlier. Something to keep in mind is this interrogate option will always be here. It'll always be an option. So what we can do is a couple things. We know that there's already a connection between Aisling and Janice, and Janice, being our front man, is somebody that we want to build up more connections with, since our Leo already has sufficient connections. So I want to deal with our Leo first, typically by, if you need to, get him back up to 3 stars, otherwise just release him. And then we can look at what our Janice's and our Aisling options are. In this case, nothing spectacular happened. Sometimes you'll get betray options or rival options that will build intelligence, and you can take advantage of that. Otherwise, in this case, we still just want to leave Janice as the last member standing to build more bargain-based connections. So we will interrogate our Aisling. We'll check our Janice, see if he has any connections. He doesn't. As far as these like destroy equipment ones, just don't worry about them. They're not that relevant. So in this case, we will just release. See an example of the intervention. Our Aisling has shown up, which is great. We can take this time to, well, normally you could try to take this time to build up into another rank, but sometimes because the leader is the person who showed up, similar to how we were building connections earlier, Aisling instead wants to build a rivalry. We don't want to do that. So we'll just release our Aisling, and then we'll check if our Hillock will build any connections into the houses we want. He doesn't, so we just release. Now we're on to the transportation event in the map. So we have our Gravicius here and our Haku here. Haku is our visitor, if you will, the person from the outside. So we're going to use him to interrogate to build up a transportation. And then we'll check our Gravicius, see if he builds any connections. He doesn't. Might as well click the veiled items. And that is this map. We'll check in further. So So now we're back in the hideout. Our research from our last map has finished. You can see here, Haku is in this little jail zone. This is only used to represent that characters are being interrogated. They are still in their safe house. So Haku came from our intervention. He is still in the intervention. Providing you are not reducing members from 1 to 0 stars with this interrogation, they're still in here. You don't have to worry about them. You can consider them as though they are in the 5-man house. In this case, we can then run our research here. So here we are at the end of the research. You execute the leader. What you see there in that little representation of the Syndicate afterwards isn't what actually happened. We can show off the Gadiro shop here. He has like a few items. It's typically like 3 to 4 uniques. You can buy them for gold. It's pretty good for getting like T2 uniques, occasional T1s, and you're hoping for T0s. And then the other option I've gone with here is Leo, who will give you a random unique. And these things called the Jinn Touched Vol Orbs, which modify the implicits and give it up to 2 implicits. In this case we have, I don't know, that seems fine, Life and Aura, sure. It'll give you random uniques and you can sort of double corrupt them. Seems like a fun addition to the game. So something to note, if you were to immediately after running your safe house, look at your June, just curiously out of the board, you'll see some strange happenings here where our Janice is rank 3 in the leadership role and our Leo is free floating. This isn't actually what's happening. So immediately after you run a safe house, just don't worry about what June has. I will say if you have multiple safe houses ready at the same time, I highly recommend you run one safe house, run a map, run the other safe house, so that nothing weird happens to your Syndicate. As you can see here, this is the very next map. We ran into a fortification, we talked to the first one. You can see the board. This is actually what has happened. Our Leo has resumed being leader, however with less stars. Janice still has the stars. Everyone's still in their places they should be. Our Haku's interrogation is finished, so our transportation is filled. So after this map, we will run the transportation, providing it's still there. A little bit on that later. In this case, you can see Camaria wants to make a relation with Rin, which is fantastic. It's perfect. We'll definitely take this option. Further on in the map, we have another intervention. We have Haku here and Ashling. Haku is 1 star with the Atlas passive on the right side here of Test of Loyalty. Every time you execute for rank, they gain 2 stars. So in this case, because our objective was just to get them both to 3 stars, it's in our interest here to get Haku from 1 to 3. That way we can still interrogate the Ashling down to like 2 to 1 and then back to 1 to 3. It's typically what I will be doing is when they show up in the good houses, I will interrogate them from 3 to 2 or 2 to 1, and then try to execute them back from 1 to 3. Further in the event, here's our research. Now, ideally, our Janice would be bringing in people from the outside, but just the way reinforcements work, it's not guaranteed to bring specific people. In this case, however, we can take this time to level our Leo back all the way up to 3. There's a little bit to be said here about if you really want, you have time to interrogate this Janice for a little bit of intelligence and then rank him back up. So now we're back in the hideout. Our transportation is filled. Again, always make sure there's no one floating around. There never should be. Just don't reduce people from 1 to 0 star. We can run our transportation here. So this is the transportation that I've been working towards. We have Rin here. Similar to before in the research, it'll show us going to 0. Don't worry about it. After you run the next map, it'll go back to normal. A small little tidbit on the All Flames is, from what I've noticed, I always drop 1. But apparently, if you don't have your leader as 3 stars, the person who gets executed here, you don't have a 100% chance to drop an All Flame. So I would, even if you don't terribly care about the rewards themselves, you should definitely have them be rank 3 just for the All Flame. This is our Gravitius, gives us full stacks of div cards. I mean, can you really be upset? It's still a full stack, right? It's funny to get a 1 of 1 from him though. And then Rin here gives Maven Chisels and Scouting Reports and regular Chisels. Be very important in farming later on. Those are my transportation people. Alright, so this is the next map after the transportation. As we can see, we're in a research event here. Again, Leo and Janice are the initial ones. Camaria is the visitor. However, in this case, again, you don't want to interrogate people down from 1 to 0. because then they get knocked into free floating and you can't run safe houses, yada yada. So in this case, we'll take the time here to execute our Chimera back up to 3. And then we'll just check the options on our Leo and our Janus here. Because Janus is the front man, and again, our Leo has enough connections, I want to leave our Janus last. So I'm going to release. And we'll see what Janus has to offer. He wants to kick himself out. Don't do that. Sometimes, again, you'll get bargains for intelligence, bargains for connections. Otherwise, just release. Something to keep in mind is, again, even with all these connections, even with our setup, you're not always going to get reinforcement. That's why the Betrayal Scarab of reinforcement can help. It's still not guaranteed at that point. But a lot of times, you'll just end up with someone who's just by themselves. You just release, chalk it up to a loss, and go on to the next encounter. I suppose conveniently is here. You see the same thing happen here. There's a little bit to be said about keeping your fortification full if you are farming transportation to ensure that your transportation shows up. So it's not the worst thing to be interrogating within fortification to keep it full. Alright, so we're back. Next map, we have a research. As you can see, Janus didn't bring in anyone from the outside. It's just Leo and Janus. Something to be said is Syndicate requires there to be 2 people in a safe house, right? It's like kind of the crux of the whole strategies. This includes not just when you run safe houses, but when you try to find them again in the future. So we can take advantage of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to release Leo here and talk to Janus. If I interrogate him, next time research comes around, it will pull him out immediately. But I found the research is the first encounter in the map, so I'll interrogate him here to build some intelligence. I will find 2 more encounters in this map, and then ideally a 3rd encounter in the map following this that isn't research, and then I'll get the full intelligence and he'll be back in place. I just need to try to make sure that before the safe house reaches 100% to get him back up to rank 3. The same can be done on this side. So this is something good to talk about again. This is the intervention. As you can see, you could technically start building the intervention intelligence. The reason we fill fortification is because transportation and fortification compete for which one will spawn in the map. Intervention and research are just guaranteed to spawn every map, so you have no incentive to have intervention be full. In this case, we'll just release and keep them at 3 stars. Don't do anything weird with them. Just to reinforce it again, we have our fortification full. This will make it so that our transportation is guaranteed to spawn in our following map. Man, the pause speed is awesome. So this is the following map. As we said last map, we have currently imprisoned one of our actual research members, and they needed 3 turns. They haven't gone through all this yet, so I'm going to skip the research for now and come back to it later in the map. After I've done the transportation and the intervention, I will come back to the research. That way I get all of the intelligence from the interrogation. Here we are with our transportation event. Now I know for a fact, because we finished our transportation event, our intervention is going to happen afterwards. We'll go transportation, intervention, research. But for now, we're here. I need my Rin to go back up to rank 3, and I will be using our Haku, who is the visitor, to be building intelligence. So we'll start with getting our Rin up to rank 3. Check the options between the 2. There's nothing of importance. In this case, I still want to build more connections outward from my Gravicius, so I'm now going to interrogate for transportation intelligence, and then check my Gravicius. Gives us a bargain for a little bit of transportation intelligence. Great. We can just keep this going. As you can see, our intervention immediately happened. Intervention works on a timer. It either happens... It's quite long. It's like a minute or a minute and a half after a map starts. It used to be when you open a map. It might still be. Or if you've done another encounter, intervention can spawn. So in this case, intervention being a house that we're not specifically trying to farm, we use these as times to build up ranks. So in this case, I will build Janus back up. We have an option here between the 2 of Ashling progressing this trusted relationship with Leo to build a little bit of research intelligence, which is great. You only get to do this once because now they're rivals. The option won't come again. And then we can check if Leo can build any connections. He wishes to break a connection. He wants to become neutral with Vegan, whereas he's currently a rival. We don't want to do that. You just want to release. Alright, continuing on. We're just trying to show, like, us progressing all the way through another set of safe houses. Here, it's kind of up to your discretion what you want to do here. You can either get like slightly more intelligence or not have to worry about ranking him back up. In this case, since it's the first encounter of the map, and it's like very easy to make sure we get all 3 ticks of this, I'm going to interrogate. If this was, let's say, the last encounter in a map, and you're not going to be able to get all 3 ticks, I would take the bargain here. Here's our intervention. Ideally, we get to rank our Haku back up to 3, so that he has, you know, maximum intelligence later while interrogating. We check if Gravicius wants to build any connections. He wants to move. We don't allow that. We hit release. Here's our transportation later in the map. Again, reinforcement is not a guaranteed event. We'll just talk to our Gravicius, see if he does anything important. In this case, you can destroy the equipment. You can do it if you want. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to release him. On the same note, though, we can do something similar to what we're doing with Janus, where we interrogate for intelligence, and then we'll just try to find the transportation later, as long as we make sure we get our Gravicius back up. At this point, with our intelligence being low, I'm fairly okay with doing this. If our intelligence was in like the 70 range, the 80 range or something, it's like pretty close to finishing, I typically will hold off using interrogation on set members. So continuing on, here's our intervention. We have an Ashling, a Haku, and a Leo. The things we are going to prioritize doing here is Ashling is 2-star, so we're going to get Ashling back up, and then Leo is a person of importance, so we will have them be last. So we will rank up Ashling, we will take a cursory glance at these 2 options, release Haku, and then check if Leo wishes to build any outward connections. He in fact does. Wants to build a connection to Haku, a 2 to a 5, great. And we're back in research. We have a Janus here, we have a Vegan here. Realistically, I want to be Vegan being the outsider, we want to interrogate him. We check the options anyway. They were trusted. You can see here we can build a rival relation. However, it will give intervention intelligence. We'll just save it until it goes the other way around, until Vegan wants to do it. So in this case, we're going to interrogate Vegan to build research intelligence and then check Janus's bargain. In this case, he wants to, again, break a connection by becoming neutral. We don't want that. And at this point, I'm still willing to interrogate him down to 1-star. And with this being the second of 3rd encounter in this map, he needs 3 turns. So we'll have the 3rd in this map, and then the first 2 in the next map, and then we'll find research. So in the next map, we'll make a note of doing research last. Here's that 3rd encounter. It was a fort, only Taurus showed up. So again, we'll check if there's any positive relations to be built. In this case, it's trying to build the Ashling, which is a 5 to a 5. We don't want that. Again, we're only trying to connect our 5s to 2s. So in this case, we can take this time to interrogate to try to block our fortification so that our transportation shows up more. So in this case, we will interrogate Tora down. So further, we're in the next map. Again, we want to be keeping our research to our last event. We found the fort. There's only a single person. Corel wants to connect to Haku. This is unacceptable. This is the 5 to a 5. We don't want that. We don't need to be building more intelligence into fortification, so you don't have to worry about this. Our Tora is still building. So next map, our fortification will be full, forcing a transportation. So in this case, we just release. Again, we just ran an event. So if you give it a second, your intervention will proc like this. We can deal with these people. In this case, we do a quick scan. Typically, the habit I have is I take a quick scan of flipping over them to see their stars. In this case, I see Vegan needs to be ranked up. And then none of these members are important members. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rank Vegan up. You can see our fortification has filled, and our Janus is finished with his prison sentence. In this case, we'll just kind of take a glance at their choices. There's nothing of interest. I'm going to release so that the leader is last, and then see if he builds a connection to an important member. He does not. We release, and we'll go on to the research. Alright, so we're back. 3rd encounter, the research. Take a quick glance. Janus needs to go back up. Ashling is an outsider. Leo remains. So, first things first, get his rank back up, especially since, as you can see here, we're getting closer and closer to our safe house being full. Boom. Take a quick glance at their 2 options. Nothing important. We're going to interrogate the Ashling. We can see here, It's almost there, but it still needs a little bit more. If he had hit a bargain, it would have been great. You're definitely not going to do anything as far as interrogating him here. We'll just release and we'll wait until another opportunity, probably in the next research. Since we don't have any of our research members or transportation members here in prison, there's no restrictions on the order of events in the next map, so we'll just do them as they come. Continuing on, here we are in research. We have Janice, we have Elrion. Janice is base, Elrion is outside. We do have another 12 intelligence coming in here, but it's going to leave us at 94. It's not quite enough, which means we will be taking this time to interrogate Elrion as well. And we get this cool little option. There's never a downside to be clicking this option. Asterisks. There's never a downside to clicking this option. It just releases the prisoners and gives you all the intelligence, so we can go ahead and click this. Bargain. This will actually have the added benefit of when we find the intervention in this map, our Aisling and Elrion could show up, so we can get their ranks back up. And we're back with the intervention. As you can see, as we talked about earlier, Aisling had a chance to show up. She did. Our focus here, again, we have no important members, none of our farming members here. Aisling is missing a star. We're going to work on getting Aisling that star back. Hillock is our leader, so we're probably going to leave him till last. So we'll execute here. Haku will probably try to do something to Hillock. We'll say no. Check out Hillock, see if he'll build a connection. He does. Unfortunately, it's to Tora. It's not the one we want. So we'll just click release. And now our research is ready. All right, here we are with the third event. It's transportation. We can see here, Gravicius is missing a rank. So this is an interesting one. For simplicity's sake, I would probably recommend most people just take the betray option here. You'll get a little bit of transportation. You'll progress the trusted to rival. I will talk a little bit about this betrayal option here. If you don't know what it's doing, never click this. But we can talk about it a little here, in case people are curious. It's a betray option. It only shows up if there is a trusted relation between two members. As you can see here, it will raise the rank of all the transportation members. It will lower the rank of all the fortification members, the rank being the stars. This will also push them into a rival relationship. If you're really desperate for a rival relationship, or if you know what you're doing, this can be a good way to push some trust into rivals, or to manipulate ranks. In this case, like I said, I'm not going to do it. I am a little concerned about getting my Gravicius back up to 3, but we're only going to be at 50% safe house. I have plenty of time. Again, because Gravicius is like the face of transportation here, he's always going to show up. I'll have time to get him back up to 3. I don't need to take this option. So in this case, I do want to progress the relationship, if only so some of these betray options stop showing up. That's why I tend to prefer rivals over trusted relationships. It's just kind of how it goes. We'll push our transportation up a little. Check out Gravicius. Don't take this option. We're not trying to remove rivals anymore. I will, with this being the third event, I'm willing to interrogate him back down to 1. Again, we have the ability to execute from 1 back up to 3. So I'll grab a little bit of extra transportation here. All right, we're back in the hideout. Like I said, our research is ready. We can run it. This is our loop. We run, a research to transportation, a research. Sometimes you go, research, transportation, transportation. It's kind of whatever. But as you can see, that's the gist of how you run this setup. The setup where you feed your 5s into your 2s. We're using interrogation heavily as a way to build up intelligence. You can target farm 4 specific members in 2 houses. I will stress again, you never run the houses with 5 people. They will break your board. You will be sad. But we can check out our Leo for his Jin Orb, as well as Janice for the Kadiro one last time. Very nice. Here's the Kadiro shop. Again, it's just like a host of uniques. It's really good for tier 2s, tier 3s, occasional T1s. I guess I will take those actually. SSF life and whatnot. And then we hit a grip of the council. I don't care about this, but we'll do it for fun anyway. You can see it's changing the implicit, adding white sockets. It's doing a lot of features of all orbs, except it can also add a second implicit, such as that. It can also break it into a rare item, but that is unlikely. Just a fun little bench. But that should be it. how to break your board down, how to get rid of all your links, how to move people where you want them, how to set up the next links, then how to run your encounters to quickly and efficiently farm specific rewards. Again, if you've made it this far, thank you so much. Hope the video did you a lot of good. As always, feel free to leave comments, like, subscription, PM, find me at Twitch, find me in game, I don't know, whatever. But either way, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and hopefully this video solved a lot of questions you had about the Syndicate mechanic.